Hey ha da hui a hui de yo hey de.
Welcome, those of you who are joining for tonight's Zoom and anybody who watches this recording afterwards. My name is Anna East, and I am the Executive Director of Chickadee Community Services, and we are helping facilitate these Zoom classes once a month. And our host is Whitney TopSky, and I'm going to let her take it away.
Danse, danse kakio. Kita skatina wow. I greet all of you. Nananaskom din megwats. Whitney Topsky nasiga son. Asini watsitsik otinia. I am tonight's host. I guess I will just share a little bit about what we're doing with the Class 7 Zoom series this spring, and hopefully we continue it. We will be continuing it this fall. We know we're going to. So each month we've been sharing different language presenters, so they share with all the teachers, and we want to continue these to get to know each other throughout the state and hopefully collaborate and work and find new connections within our language, within our language, tribal language teachers. So thank you all for coming, and I'm going to introduce I feel like it's only 7:02. I'm like, I don't want to jump right in. Oh yes, we have the Montana Tribal Language Greetings. We got this from Matt Bell, who works with OPI. Thank you, Matt, for giving us this this poster for all of our languages. I should make this bigger. My screen is a little bit small. So from me, Danse and Boujou from Rocky Boy. If you want to, yes, thank you, Matt. I do not want to butcher any of these words, so I'm not going to. Boujou, I'll say Boujou. I know that one for sure. And Shoda, I know Shoda from Crow. So if you're coming in from, let us know where you're coming in from. Give us a shout out from your tribe, and maybe you're out of state, in state, where you're at. That would be nice. Just to let everybody else know.
Hey, Nana, Aba, Nito, hey, Nana, Nana. Marlon Spoon Hunter, Northern Rapo from the Wind River Indian Reservation. Glad to join. Hey, Terry, Tanini.
In Chin naba.
Yeah,
Nahaba.
that's got now. Hold on.
Ah. Yeah. Eh. No, Marlon, neat ein, nina hatches chen, in on eight then. Ninanich, hinana anit, hinana why?
Yeah.
Our languages are very close, kind of like Cree and Chippewa, or maybe Hidatsa and Crow. Upsalaga, excuse me. Say it properly.
Danse,
Uh,
Nia, Elaine Topsky and Seagarson, a Siniwati Siko Tinia. Mietin otaha kahkio ependohtatu kahkio kitemska nao. Miu kisigantig exe.
Okay, if you haven't had a chance, you can introduce yourself, or you can even put it in the chat if you don't want to speak. That's fine. We are going to introduce tonight's presenter. His name is Terry Brockie. Terry comes from the Ani White Clay Nation, located on the Fort Belknap Indian Reservation in north central Montana. Terry's past experience includes serving as a Chief Executive Officer of Island Mountain Development Group, the economic development arm of the Fort Belknap Indian community. He held public office serving as the Blaine County School Superintendent and an educator in the public school system. Terry continues to teach his native language as an adjunct at the Ani Nakota College, and owns his own consulting business, Ani Consulting. His services include IAFA education, language and culture revitalization endeavors, non-tribal entities seeking engagement within with tribes, and public speaking. Terry is married and a father of 2 sons. Welcome, Terry, to WOW.
Welcome to all of you. I'm glad you're in my presence. Red Belt is my Indian name. No, only nen. Nachine, not Nachine. I don't know if you can see it or not, but I'm a White Clay, I'm Nakota, I'm also a Arapaho too. I have descendancy to the Arapaho as well. So no, really happy to be here tonight. So I'm thank Chickadee for allowing me to present. I guess they're pretty desperate. Hey, no, I'm just joking, but I just want to thank everyone for coming tonight and then taking time out of your day, especially as teachers and knowing being in the trenches. I know how much it is to try to teach the language and then have one prep period, and you're supposed to make your curriculum and correct all your tests and plan. And so it can be very challenging as native language teachers and being in the trenches. But yet I know how passionate each of you are for our ways, our pathways. And I see many people, friends, educators, and on here tonight, and I just want to thank you for listening. I hope you can take something home good tonight that'll help you in your classrooms. And so, did you want me to start right now, Whitney, or just roll with it? Okay, all righty. So, I guess one of the things that I was told was kind of to speak about maybe methodologies of teaching. And today I want to more uh, talk more about a methodology of supplementing your whatever you teach, TPR, teaching proficiency through storytelling, whatever it is whatever your methodology is that you teach. And if you think about it, in a regular elementary, high school class setting, we might have 45 to 60 minutes to teach each day. And so, we get a couple hours a week with kids, and not only is it teaching them to try to become speakers, but our language is infinite. If you think about it, all of our languages, they're infinite. And how do you build all of that together? And so one of the things that I always struggled with was, vocabulary building. I can teach as best I can to speak, but how do we build vocabulary to supplement that? And then our languages, for example, are sometimes very intricate. And if we compare it to English, and I'm speaking to the choir, English is a term-based language, and where most of our indigenous languages are very descriptive and verb-based, and they're very rich. And to me, English is really, really dry. And so how do you talk about teepees or horses? There's all these just lists of things we can teach vocabulary. It could be kinship. Kind of the basic things like colors, numbers. We all know that kind of stuff, but also verbs, and one of the things that I'm not a fluent sign speaker, but one of the things that I wanted to talk about was the using PISL or Plains Indian Sign Language within your classroom to help build vocabulary, whether it be nouns, build verbs, whether through actions, states of being, and then also uh, 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 like promoting proper syntax of your language, the order in which we put it. Because, for example, like maybe in Arapaho or Inanna, like in Inanna or Arapaho, they might say uh Hachina Habethin. Okay, it's good to see you, right? And we in Aani we might say Atan China Habetin. It's almost the same. And so, but I always try to teach. It's important because so many learners, today's world, they're learning English, and there's a certain order of English. It's always subject predicate if you think about it, right? The man is eating, the man subject predicate object, the order is the same. And and so but we in tribal languages have our own orders. And so so I think I mean, we're oral people. Our languages are oral. We've only been writing for 150, 160 years, maybe, if that, like my tribe never had a dictionary till the 1960s, late 70s, actually, and 80s. And so when you think about it, that's not very long when you think of time immemorial of our people and our histories and our culture. And so, when I think about that, I really like to stay to the oral and more the written form sometimes is the supplemental. It's hard when you do it on a Zoom, like Anna's on my Zoom. I have a weekly language class. It's kind of hard to interact sometimes because some people turn their cameras off, you turn on your microphone and then you get feedback. And so it's a little bit difficult, but really in a teaching setting, in a classroom setting, I like to really stick to the oral aspect of it. And as we know, and even studies a lot of times show that Indigenous people are very visual learners, and I think about just the basic signs for like for work, huh? For work, the basic sign is just to make your hands like this. This can mean to work, to make something, to do something. You see so it has multiple meanings, right? So that means work, right? At the same time, you can use this like this, and it's kind of hard, but this is to teach. And you're taking your eyes and I'm showing you, you see? That's what I'm doing. But the practical applications are to work. We have to do it ourselves. Even in my language, it's reiterated that way. I might say, Nishjin, Nishjana, or Nishjin, or, I might say it that way. And Nishja means to do it, and it kind of means to do it on your own. Nishji, to make it on your own. Nisitsa, you hear that nis in the beginning of that word, and it means you got to do it on your own. And so that's how it is. And so I try to reiterate that through visual. And so that's an example. And you can teach all kinds of vocabulary. You can teach all kinds of verbs. You can put them into sentences by using that. And the thing that we often think about that our learners, especially if they're just learning, you're talking to them in Indian, and you might have visual cues, you might have sign, you might have written words, but you think about the process because many, are second language learners that are teaching today, even, or they have remnants of it. Many are fluent, but for the learner, they're hearing a word in the heritage language, and then they're saying, okay, what does that mean? Okay, and they're trying to figure it out in English, and then they're trying to figure out, okay, now how do I say it? And then you have all these different things. Okay, now we put it into a sentence, and now we have maybe a noun and a verb, and now there's multiple things. Oh, there's a question. Oh, it's I'm not doing this, or it's in the future, and all these things. And so it can be very, very taxing for the learner to take that in. And so, that's where I like using a lot of like at my college class, I'll teach a lot of vocabulary in the very introductory because I just want them to build up the ability to say words, and I'll give them simple phrases, but I really want them to build up the vocabulary and create what we say phonemic awareness, right? Because there's sounds in everyone's language that is different than maybe we're English speaking people. And so that's very important to think about when you use sign. And so that's kind of the basis of what I like to use, and because we're visual learners. And so like so often like I was on a meeting the other day, and there were teachers, and an elder came in and talked to the school and asked the students how many kids knew what their tribe was at about a fifth or sixth grade age, and very few of them knew their own tribes. You see, so that knowledge is not being passed on often in the home. We kind of assume that they know that, but not always do they know that. And so, that's a good way to begin. Like for me, like my sign is right here. It's making the sign of a waterfall. It's off my stomach, and I make the sign of a waterfall because we're known as many different things. We're known as, for my tribe, I'm Onin, and that's our name. where it's derivative from Aaj, which means white clay, and Inen means a man. And so we say on Inen, I'm a white clay person, I'm a white clay man. But we're known as, see the misnomer of sign language. When the French came here, they thought we were saying, oh, we got big bellies. So then they started saying Grovon, and then that's how that name became Grovon, was based off of our sign. And there's different signs. The other thing is different tribes have different names in their language for each other, and they might have different signs too. So the signs that I might use might not be the same sign as that tribe might use for themselves, right? So like for example, my brother sister tribe, the Inanda, they say like this, I've seen this sign. You see what I mean? For like they had tattoos. You see, so there's that. Like Cree or Chippewa, or Anishinaabe or Nehiyawal, right? That's Cree, right? I try to say it the best. They make the sign for a rabbit. You see what I mean? Meaning rabbit man. I don't know if they make that sign for themselves, but that's the sign that was taught to me, that it meant a rabbit man, and then it's a far off rabbit man for Chippewa because they were farther east than, and even in our language we call Cree, we call them Natsa, rabbit man, and then we call Chippewas Nawu Natsa, or Genhu Natsa, excuse me, Genhu Natsa or Genhu Natsa, and that means far off, downriver rabbit men, meaning the Chippewas. You see, and so there's names descriptively in our language, but that way when I teach them, they learn that this means that, and they're associating the target language with the sign. So you teach it, and I know there's different gestures, like within sign language, but for me, I can teach even the syllables with it. You know what I mean? I teach the syllables, and so I might say not sa, and so I make it so it rhymes with the word. So then they start learning the cadence of the language too. You see, and so I try to teach all those tribes, for example, or and so to make awareness of other tribes. That's an example. So I mean, it's just like there's Oninen, and then there might be Cree, and then there might be far off Chippewa. We might say this for Crow. Just an example. See, even here for Cheyenne. I was watching, there's a video link. You can see the Cheyenne man, and he makes his sign that was done in 1930. And so it means they have, as I understand it, as they have striped arrows. But us in the Arapahoes would call them Ittisinin, or I'm not sure exactly how in Inanna they say it, but it means they cut their finger, because we misnomered it in sign. And we said they cut their fingers. But from the Cheyenne perspective, as I heard it, they have striped arrows, you see? And so that identifies that, you see? And so it's just like simple behind us right there, right? There's your teepee. That's the sign for it. Teepee. You see, that's my grandpa. Nin, and it's his back fat. You see, that's his name. So he keeps me honest. You see what I mean? But that's an example of that. That sign is for teepee. And so you can say tawatsanin, you see, and I tawatsanin, and I can stop it if there's, because our languages have cadences, they might end with, some languages are very gutturally, some are clicky, and you can kind of use the sign to kind of emphasize that. And so there's a lot of basic things I want to teach them right off the get-go. For example, like let's just talk verbs, right? So verbs, I want it, like when I talk about like syntax, the order in which we put it. I want to teach them like future, past, now. So like some signs they'll say in the future, they'll say it's ahead, right? See how I put that? Some will say it's behind and right now by just pointing down right in front of you. So there's your future marker. There's your past marker. There's right now. Some say it's ahead of us and they point this way. It's behind us. You see what I mean? And it's right now. So there's different ways that you can convey the future, right? And so then I might teach like dance, and there's a verb right here. Dance. We say bida. You see, that's how we would say dance, and that's the sign for it, right? And so I could teach someone, and then I might teach them me, you, and him or her. I don't know how many languages have, see, that's the difference. See, most languages have a shim, I always call it, a he or a her. They don't have the actual pronoun like English does with he or her. So I just say they have a shim, and that's just my little joke with them. So I teach them that. And I could say, just like I heard Marlon, he said, Ninano. He said, that's me. Ninano, Ninan, that's you. Ninanich, that's him or her. And so that's an example of that. So I teach them that's a basic pronoun by itself. But now the na, the ch, and the n, I'll say the na means I am, n means you, and ch, or k, if it's a woman, means he or she. So now I could teach them, okay, I could teach them, for example, future, right? In the future, dance I am. And that's how we would say it. I would say done. So I would say done, bitano. You see how I did that? I would say, or I could say done, bitano. You see? And so I teach them how to say, I will sing. Ne, bitano. I sing. Nini, no, Nini, or excuse me, Nini, bitano. I am dancing right now. I mean, just basic things. So then, like I said, I have the future, the past, right now. I teach them I am, you are, he or she, just because we want just kind of we want to build up speaking, first and second person dialogue, so they can, and so then you can put in a question, right? And so I could say, I can teach them, oh, this means a question. And so like in our language, we would say, that makes it a question for a yes or no. So then I could say, bita. Are you dancing? You see what I mean? And so, or I could say, ne bita, am I dancing? You see? And so then I can teach it. And it's visual. I haven't written anything down. I'm just using the sign. They know that this means done, this means ne. This can mean ni or other forms that I can teach them. You see, this means bita, this means na, you see, or if it's a female. So that's like just one note. And our hellos there, it says, well, hey, that's a man's way. A woman says naha. It's not on that list, but a woman would say naha in our language. Okay. But again, words have different meanings because that can mean okay too. Both those words can mean okay, or you're starting something. Like if I started this class, I might say, well, hey, you see, and if it's a lady, she might say naha. So it means, okay, we're gonna get started now, kind of a acknowledgement like that. And so like for example, those are some basic things that I want to start with them. You see, that's an example of with verbs. And then I go right into verbs and I just teach the basic verb stem. I want to teach them that verb stem first because I'm going to use sign to build outwardly on it with it in whatever I do. So I might say bita. I might say like some basic things I always start with. I always start with eat, one hand or two hand, bitchit, I might say, bitchit, to eat. And I make everyone say it. I make them and I teach them sign too, to talk with your hands. So you hit your hands and you talk, you see? So I teach them that. I teach them that sign right away so they know. And then I teach them to say. You see what I mean? Because this is talk, this is say. So I teach them that. So they understand that so that I want them to say it too. Okay. And so those are some kind of real early things that I want to establish with them when I'm working with verbs. So then I get into the verb proper and I might, like I said, I might teach dance, I might teach eat, I might teach drink. You see, they're very literal. That's the thing I love about them. Is sign language is very, very literal. And so I go dance. So everybody can make that sign right now. Dance, that's how you make it, right? And then you have eat, right? That's eat. You have drink, right? What's this one? This one's pretty easy. That's sleep. You see what I mean? Okay. You might have to sing, you see, to sing. And so, I mean, if you think about it, there's dance, there's eat, there's drink, there's sleep, there's sing. So, and I could teach that, and you could teach that in your target language every time. Okay, whatever your language is, you could teach that. And then you might say, and then you're constantly reiterating, future, past, right now, I am, you are. Oh, this means a question. And a basic one is yes. Everyone knows this one, yes. And so here's like idiosyncrasy, right? This is yes, right? But sometimes people reach out towards it. And so it's like, I understand you. I caught you, what you're saying, just by moving it forward and bringing it back towards you using that sign of yes, where other people just might say yes. And you'll notice that. I don't know, like I gave you a list of sign language videos, and there's some old ones from the 1930s. And in that video, you can see there's other ones that you can find on like YouTube, but there's this one where the guy's up telling a story, and you can see these guys all sitting in the back of the teepee, and they're having their little sidebar conversations. And you can see the guy's making sign, and the other guy's he's acknowledging his speech instead of saying yeah, yeah. He's going in sign saying, yeah, I got you, I got you, I got you. And so there's yes, there's no, right? There's yes and no. And so those are different things, because I want to say, do you understand? Do you hear? Do you hear? Do you understand? And I teach that word. I might say, "Atsinitaba." That's in our language, how you say, do you understand? So I'll go, "Atsinitaba," do you understand? And so that way they can say, yeah, I understand, you see? And I might say, oh, nitaba. No, yeah, I understand. I hear you, you see? That's an example. So that's a way you can not only speak the language, but then non-verbally go back and forth with them, and you can conversate that way. We see a lot of sign language. The places where we see them today, if we see it in our ceremonies, and we see it at powwows primarily. That's where I see it anymore, where people still use remnants of sign language. And then we all can't talk as Indians, they always say, you tie your hands behind your back, we can't talk, and there's a lot of truth to that, and so, and like one thing I always teach is like that, because that means over there. No, I'm just joking. I'm just being goofy. But an example of that, though, is when we use those. So we use all those verbs, okay? And so I can make it into a question, like I said, here you dance, here you sing, are you going to sing? You see what I mean? And that's the order in which I would put it together with my language. You see what I mean? I would make the question, in the future, you sing, you see? And so I'd make that sign. And so that way I teach them the proper order of the language, whether it be like I'm making a statement, a true statement, I'm making a negative statement where I might say, like in my language, I would say, nay, si, nay, I, not, right? Nay, si, but dad, I'm not dancing. Or I would say, Atan se, you see, Atan se, but dad, I'm not going to dance. You see, so I could say them many different ways in that sense. And so that's one of the things that I really, really like with verbs. So, and so like there's like, just when you think about maybe what like different lists of things, you could put with time, you could do with animals, I mean, buffalo, horse, wolf, and teach it in your target language, you know what I mean? You could say deer, elk, moose, antelope. You see, you could do this is one of the things too, and you find out that our kids are becoming sedentary. So I was even in my college classes last semester, I made this sign. So I said an animal, and he's got a striped face, an animal and striped face. And I said, do you know what that animal is? I said, do you know what that animal is? And everyone said, no. I said, it's a badger. And everyone kind of looked at me. I only had about 8 or 10 kids in there, but they all looked at me. They didn't know what a badger was. And I was just like, wow, this. And so I proceeded to kind of give them heck and say, you guys got to get off your phones and get off your computers and get out in the natural world. And so that became a teachable moment, you see, to talk about our history, because as class 7 teachers, we're not only language specialists, we're cultural specialists. So as language teachers, we should be active participants within our culture in all aspects. That's just not ceremonies. That's understanding powwows, understanding cultural protocols, all those things. And that all can be conveyed in sign, like a ceremony. You might say right here, there's your sun dance. For those that you see, you make a center pole and you make the action of like you're blowing a whistle, a sweat lodge, you go in. So you make the shape of a sweat lodge and you go in, a teepee, you see, all those things. And then you teach it in your target language. And so those are some really good things. And you could adapt that. And so those are some things that you could talk about. Like I talked about animals, I talk about kinship, right? Your mother is on your mother is you put your right hand to your left. So now I could teach that, and I could teach them like in our language. I don't know how other languages are, but we have a way that we speak to our mother, and then we have a way when we speak about our mother in like third person. So you can make that distinguishment, you know what I mean? And so there's our mother, our father, our brother, and then we teach like people, like people, woman, man. Some people go like this, for man. You see, man, woman, and then you do like a man, and he's small, and you reach down by your side and you show that he's small, meaning a boy. You do a woman, and then you do the same on the side. Your hand would be on the side of you. That means a girl. You do a woman, and you use a cane. That means an elderly lady. You see what I mean? You do a man with a cane. That means an elderly man. You do mother with a cane, your grandmother. You do father on this side with a cane, your grandfather. You see, you could do like you suckle from your mother. So that's your sister. If you go there, you suckle with them. You use two fingers. So there's your sister. And then you do a woman. There's your brother because he's a man. You see what I mean? And so that's an example of that, of like kinship terms. You see what I mean? So there's ways to convey kinship terms. Like I said, I was doing tribes. There's all different tribes of tribes. You might say Upsalaga, Nahio. You see, Inanna, Oninen, Nachine, that's Nakota or Sioux. You see, that's an example of that. So there's tribes. You can do like emotions, states of being, Right here is I pull it back, right? It means a buffalo bull. He's withdrawn from a battle. That means he's afraid. You see what I mean? Because he pulls back, right? And that's an example. I could say, I'm brave, I'm strong, you see, because I take rawhide and I rip it in half. So I'm brave, I'm strong, I'm courageous, I'm fierce, you see. Those are signs. Those are some signs we still use. Some people might go like this, some might go like that. And you see that. There's good, there's bad, I mean, there's thick, there's thin, there's 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 heavy where you bring your hands down. There's light where you go up. Okay. You can do, I'm just kind of looking over lists like that. Um, uh, like I said, people, like a baby. You see, there's a baby, right? You see, there's a baby. And they might go here and right here on their back because they wore a papoose or they have a cradle board. So they might go here and here. That's some way we sign things. You could use examples of that. I talked about verbs, you see, dance, eat, see, hear. Now, here's an example like listen. See, we have synonyms in English. Well, in our language, I would say need taba is the act of listening, right? But I would say chachchi, that's to listen. So I'm listening for something, you see. In order to listen, there's got to be something said. There's talk, say. So there's synonyms even in sign like that we have. And so that's an example. Cry. You see what I mean? To cry. So I might say, here, and I point to you. Now I'm pitying you. You see what I mean? I pity you because I'm saying I cry for you. I pity for you. Where I might go like this, and I'm saying I'm pitiful because it means there's no meat on the bone. I'm just skinny. It could mean I'm skinny. I'm poor. You see, I'm pitiful. You see, that's an example of that. You know, um, you might say like now you want to add some adverbs to it. So you might use want. You see, want is like if you look like this, it'd be like that. That means to want, right? So I might say, ni ti ben no, I want to drink. Ni ti beats and no, I want to eat, you see? And so you can ni ti ni bia no, I wanna sing. I always try to teach them because we're spiritual people. I want to teach them like to pray in signs. So you make medicine. You see, you make things holy. So singing is out this way, upwards is holy, right? So you're saying to pray. You see, you make medicine. That's an example of that. I always want to teach them that. So I might say, Artan bibiti no. I'm going to pray. You see? And I want to teach them because those are cultural aspects for us. We're spiritual people, and I don't really care about the Western ways of separation of church and state because in our ways we can't separate them. You see, it's always together like that. See, there's your sign for together. There's beside, there's above, there's below, there's in the middle, you see? So you can teach relative locations with all those things. Very literal, you see? You can teach size. There's big, there's little or here, there's fast, there's slow. You see what I mean? So I might say here and go like that. And I said, oh, a fast wagon. You see? That's an example. Fast wheels. So I'm making the signs of wheels, you see? So those are things that you can do to add to that. Just looking at some of these lists of all these signs I have. I said animals. You can do birds. You can teach vocabulary of birds. So here's your sign for bird, right? Okay, so I could say a bird with a big beak, nakatiehi, an eagle or nachta'a, white-headed eagle, or sitsikatiehi, the striped one, the older eagle, right? I could say I could say, Beata, you see, the owl, he's the bird, he flies, you see. I can teach him how to count through sign, right? I can teach him ordinal sign, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, where this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you go 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 on your knuckles, you see. So I would say 23, you see, 23, like you could teach numbers and counting that way by teaching them through sign. You can teach, like I said, kinship. You could teach the seasons. It's winter, you see. Excuse me, I just had my time go. Winter, you could say spring, where the grass is just starting to grow. It's short. So again, like with a child, you put it down low. You see, then you could say summer. You could say fall, where you make the sign for a tree and a leaf, and you say it's fall. You see, you can teach it's cold, it's warm, it's hot, where you like touch something hot. You see, so you can teach a lot of things. You can teach thunder. There's your thunder. You could teach lightning. You see, there's all these things you can teach that are, you could teach it's foggy. You see, here's cloudy, right? Cloudy. Now here's foggy because it's cloudy so much you can't see. I can teach you, I can praise you. I can say, you're good, you're fake, you're beautiful. You see? Or if I wanted to be mean, which I wouldn't, I could say you're ugly, hey, I'm just teasing, but that's an example of beautiful here and a sign of good. I could teach, I acknowledge you and say, oh, I could put my hand up and acknowledge you and then glide into good. So it's you, I acknowledge you and you're good. You see, that would be like using kind of aho, you see, or however you might say it, in your language. Um, Windy, you can teach geography. You can teach a butte. There's a butte. Now there's mountains. You can teach the earth. You see, I could say, hey, come here, sit down on the ground here. You see, I could be way across over there. I'm at the powwow and I see my friend over there and I make that sign to get their attention. This would be to get their attention. I'd say, come here, come sit down, you see, right here on the ground, and call them over there, you know. And so I want to feed you, you could say that or something, come over here to my camp, you could tell that from way over there and they would understand you again because it's visual, you see. And like I said, you could teach geography, like for example, like I said, a butte, a mountain, rivers, like that, stuff like that. You could teach. It's very simple. What else here? Like I said, relative locations, high, up. I point way up, point down. Body parts are real easy. You just point to them. So if you want to teach body parts, you could just, say, like if I was just teaching just a nose, nobody's nose, I would say, yes, my mouth, picky, wanatan. You see? Beat besith, wanatan, no. You see, that's bithan, a neck, you could just go through all those things and say them. And so There's tools, there's guns. You could teach gun, teach bow, you could teach arrow. I mean, there's food, there's dry meat or meat. You see what I mean? I mean, when all you ladies probably have made dry meat at one time or another. You take the piece of meat and you take your knife and you butterfly it out and go again. That's an example. Like a berry. You make a sign for a brush or something like that, and then the act of picking that berry off that brush. It's real literal. You could do structures, like I said, teepee, a house or a building, right? So then, like you combine stuff, like maybe I've taught them in verbs, I've taught them all dance, maybe I teach them write. You see what I mean? Maybe I teach them read. So I might say writing house. So that means a school. I might say bibiti house, a praying house, bibiti need. You see, a church, you know what I mean? I could say a Athe house, Sundance, see back. I could say maybe like with a rattle to say I'm doctoring. So I might say doctoring house, meaning the hospital, And so that's an example. I could say jout, yeah, jout, what na woo. I could say that really high writing school. You see what I mean? Meaning the college, you see? So those are examples of that. And I know we're kind of running out of time, but I hope, I made a list of books and stuff. Like I use just a simple book. I don't know, there you can see it. It's this like sign talk to Cheyenne Indians. And then there's another one here, Indian Sign Language by Tompkins. These were done by men a long time ago in the 1800s, so they're good references. And I left the list there. And so, those are things that you can use as resources. Like I said, I am not a fluent signer, but over the years I've practiced so much. When I see sign, I can kind of follow it. You can do all kinds of stuff. You can say there's many, there's a little bit. I mean, you could emphasize those kind of particle words that are just a little, until, when, all these little basic things. So, a question, and then you could say a question and a tree, and you'd say the sun goes around it. So now you're asking when, because it means like, where's the shadow at? You see what I mean? And you could kind of turn it sideways. If I want to know how, I might go here and then work, how do you do it? You see what I mean? How? See, I'm going here and work. So now I emphasize how. So those are some ways that you can like do questions too as well. This means like how many? You see what I mean? So I'm counting after that. I'm going here. How many? Question, how many? You see? So it's just examples of that. So I'll be quiet, I guess. And if there's any questions, and I know they wanted me to kind of wrap up here about 15 minutes before, I think, correct, if I remember right. And I thank you guys all for taking time. I praise every one of you for being language teachers and really trying to perpetuate our culture. It's really I'm going to give my soapbox speech right now, really fast. But that natin, that's who we are. Huh? Tawatsanite. We're Indian people, and we're each our own tribe, and we have to retain our pathways and perpetuate it and think way ahead for our children. How do we want it for them? And you guys are at the front line of it all in my book. And I praise you for everything that you guys do for our tribes because it makes us strong. You see, they're all of us. You see, I'm polite. I go you and then me. We're all strong. So that's it. That's all.
I think we had a raised hand. Did somebody have a question? Sorry.
I think that was me, and then I lowered it.
Oh,
But
okay.
yeah. So Terry, that was really, really helpful. And I think one of the things that, that as an instructor, or a teacher, that when we do this, like, I hope everybody was doing the signs with him because I think that really helps, you remember. I mean, I was like, challenge my students and say, do you think you can learn 30 words in 10 minutes? And they're like, no, but through sign you can. And so it's really, like it's, I challenge, my professors at the college. I was like, you can learn. I know you can. And they don't believe me. And then after the lesson, they're able to do that. But for me, I think the signs have helped me with, the language. So, oh,
Ah,
Hi, Terry. This is Connie Filesteel.
hi, Connie.
Um, I was just going to share that all the sign language, that's all brain-based teaching for second language acquisition. When I was a teacher in Arizona, I was actually teaching my Spanish students English, right? And so when I did my ESL degree at Arizona, brain-based teaching is with, with sign language, anything using the five senses to really help acquire and learn that vocabulary. It's going to take it into long-term memory versus just short-term memory. So I just wanted to share that quick piece. Thank you.
Lunch, Terry. Appreciate you. You always do such a wonderful job. Kwam from Entla'ai. I'm in Missoula, and how we say that in our Salish Kalispet language, Entla'ai, one of the names. But I was just gonna say the sign language, I really loved it that you added that, because I noticed when we use sign language in the classroom, it really helps with bringing down anxiety too, because I notice there's a lot of trauma around the language sometime, and then it's so healing when they come into the classroom. And it even really helps bring in a lot of movement too, because then, those anxieties come down, and the more movement you bring in, it's really good. It's really good.
Yeah.
So that was very interactive and well done, Lamb Lunch.
Thank
Good,
you.
good, good
Ah,
to see you.
oh, she brought up one thing just on a comment on that, and one of the things that I really think is very important, like she talked about, is, we all carry historical trauma. We all carry it, whether we want to admit it or not. But I think it's very important for our kids to be exposed to that, to what it is, so that hopefully, if they can acknowledge it, they can bring that down and it reduces that anxiety. And that's one of the beauties of Indian Ed for All. We're able to teach our stories, we're able to teach our histories, we're able to teach our songs, we're able to teach our language. And I see the fruits of Indian Ed for All in the state of Montana because I see our young people. It gives me so much optimism because I see them being proud. We say Thanu Bitha. They walk straight up, they walk trustworthy and honest. You know what I mean? And that's something that always, sometimes it seems like we're always like at the end of the line, but that always gives me optimism. So, but addressing that with kids, and it doesn't matter what age, they need to understand that history. And it's not regurgitating all the boarding school, but it's important to talk about that and let them kind of self-reflect on maybe things that they do, because that really helps lower that anxiety. But thank you for that comment. I appreciate that.
I think we have time for a couple more questions if anybody has any questions, and then Anna will come on and talk about our renewal credits.
I have a question about the sign for man. Is that like making a sign of like braids? Just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, yeah. So just a sign of braids, yeah, where a woman, like, just like you're wearing your hair. See, your hair's out right now. See, and that's an example of that. Where see, there's Whitney. She's like, oh yeah, eh, but that's an example. See, but other tribes, I think, if I remember right, in Upsalaga, they make the sign this way for a man because he wears a pompadour, huh? And so I might be wrong or right, but I think that was what it was. Is they would make a sign up here. You see. And so I don't know if it's here or here. I'm not 100% sure, but I remember that there was a sign like that was a little bit different than man for man. So just a comment.
Well, thank you.
Any other questions? Sorry, I was thinking, had a little bit of quiet time thinking about, I love that you were talking about the different like emotions, verbs, and structures. I have those written down. So I was trying to write and pay attention at the same time. So I was trying to write notes as fast as I could. I wasn't doing the signs, but I was writing notes. So I hope I wrote good notes, because that's how I remember, is to write things down.
Sure. And that's the
Mhm.
thing, differentiated instruction. I mean, everyone learns differently. And she brought up like kinesthetic stuff, moving around. There's visual stuff where you're showing this way. And it's not just sign, you might have pictures up behind you too. Maybe you want to focus on oral, or maybe if you guys understand like TPRS, you build up all that vocabulary. And so then when you want to move into writing, they already know the vocabulary. So now I don't have to spend there saying, oh, E means eh and I means eh, and if you write it twice, it means E, and go and do all that, stuff that you lose kids with in my world. That's just my experience of teaching. But I really, honestly, the biggest kind of light bulb for me as just in structure was really teaching it with proper syntax. However, we put our words together using those signs, so now they start to know, oh, when I talk about myself and like in the it's like na is at the end, or the pronoun is at the end, or the future, or, and it kind of helps them start the word formation, and then they can plug and play kind of. So that's just kind of a comment I want to reiterate.
Okay, see that if someone sent you the link for tonight and you would like to sign up to receive information about future events, please register here in the chat box. And you can also visit Chickadee Community Services on all the social media. They're on Facebook, Instagram. You can go to there to find out more information for our future events. Anna, do you want to talk a little bit about is there any more questions? Sorry, I didn't ask for more questions. There we go. There's the chickadeecs.org.
Well, I will share a couple more resources. I'll talk about a couple things and then I'm going to share my screen again. But first of all, Matt Bell with OPI, I put the link for the intro poster with all the greetings on it earlier in the chat, but also he's got a gigantic list of resources for language and culture teachers. So we'll drop that link in the chat as well if you want to check that out. And the idea is, you click on every link, it opens in a new tab, and then you just leave them there until you have time to look at them. Another resource that I wanted to share as well is the Class 7 teaching resources website that the Montana Digital Academy is in charge of, that I actually created, but it's under Montana Digital Academy. And that is a place where people can go and actually watch people teach in their classrooms. So I go and do videos with teachers. So like Terry was just talking about kinesthetic, like TPR, total physical response. I have some footage of Whitney doing that in her classroom. I've got Lavana, who is on this call tonight, is featured on there as well, and some other folks. So it's a really cool, different kind of resource there where you can see teachers in action and hear them talk a little bit about what they were trying to accomplish with their students and what they did do. So that link is in the chat as well. And then if you are interested in renewal units, I mentioned this at the top of the class. You can sign up for the renewal units. This is just for classroom teachers in Montana who need to renew. You don't need it if you're not that. But you can get these renewal units if you're a teacher that isn't Class 7 certified and use that for renewal. So that link is in the chat as well. And basically what you'll do is you'll put in your name and your address, email address, make sure that you check that address, and then I will send those renewal units out tomorrow. Oh, I should have check your email soon off of this, but actually, if you received the link from the email that I sent out earlier, then we already have this in there. I will send another request for suggestions. As Whitney said at the beginning, we're interested in meeting people's needs and doing what you're interested in, learning about, providing more, more instruction and more training and more just conversation around those things. So if you have suggestions for these Class 7 Zoom topics, we would love to hear them. And I have a link for that I can send out in an email. The next Class 7 Zoom series is going to be on May 7th, and that is going to be with Lavana Little Owl Reelbird, who is a pre-K teacher in Crow Agency, and I watched her teach math with 4-year-olds in Crow language a couple weeks ago, and it was incredible. So she's going to be with us in a month. And then finally, I just want to always be reminding people that we have a statewide language conference, and it is during the same time as MEA days. No, it's not called that anymore. MFPE days in October. And we schedule it at that time because teachers tend to have those 2 days off. And hopefully you'll be able to travel to be with us in Billings in October. And that is what I have on my list here. So I'm going to stop sharing and hand it back to Whitney.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and thank you to our presenter Terry Brockie. It was very, very well done. We really enjoy all of your knowledge and everything that you help us in our classrooms, and I hope that it reaches more people. And with the recording, it's going to be recorded, so we will be able to watch it again.
One little comment, I put up a list, like I said, of like different resources, like those books, and I did some Zoom, YouTube links. There's a couple of them. They're pretty dated, you know what I mean? And it's kind of almost like it almost makes you sick to it the way they're kind of filmed, like us. We're kind of like poor little Indians, But you get past all that, and there's some really good like sign language stuff in there. You know what I mean? I just want to make that comment. They even use the titles Injun, INJUN, and it's like, but you get past that, and you see a lot of good sign where you can see it in fluent conversation, and it's a good resource to kind of like as you learn to kind of build your vocabulary within signs. So I just want to say that little comment. But there's some other stuff too. So
Okay. Sounds good. We're at 7:59. So that was great. Thank you so much. Get to tell me in.
thanks everyone.
Thanks everybody for coming.
Hey na hui yo, hey 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 hey, ah hui yo, hey hey.